Welcome back, everyone. Ready to unlock another corner of the world.
Absolutely.
Today, we're tackling something that's a bit of a head scratcher for many: Irish inheritance and gift tax.
It's a topic that often gets pushed aside.
People think, that's for later. But we're here to show you why getting a head start can make a world of difference.
Exactly. It's like having a treasure map, but instead of searching for buried gold.
We're navigating the ins and outs of Irish inheritance laws to potentially maximize what you receive.
And trust me, there are plenty of twists and turns on this map.
And just like any good treasure hunt, we need to decode the clues, starting with the big one: C at T.
CCAT, short for Capital Acquisitions Tax, is essentially the umbrella term for both inheritance tax and gift tax in Ireland.
So, whether you're on the receiving end of a generous inheritance or maybe planning to surprise someone special with a substantial gift.
CIT comes into play.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The person who receives the inheritance or gift, they're the one who foots the tax bill, not the giver.
That's right, a common misconception.
Definitely something to keep in mind. But let's talk numbers. What's the damage, so to speak?
The standard COT rate is a hefty 33%. That's right, over a third of anything above a certain threshold could be heading straight to the taxman.
33%. Now, that's a sizable chunk. Makes those tax-free thresholds sound even more appealing. But there's a catch, isn't there? It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
You hit the nail on the head. These thresholds, they actually vary depending on your relationship with the person who's being so generous.
So understanding Irish inheritance law is like piecing together a family tree at the same time.
You could say that.
Who are the lucky ones perched at the top of this inheritance tree?
That would be Group A children inheriting from their parents. They get the most favorable threshold, a cool $335,000 bay, tax-free.
335,000, not too shabby. But what about those who don't quite fit into that fortunate category? Say, those inheriting from a grandparent, an aunt, or even a close friend.
They fall into different groups with different thresholds. Group B, which includes siblings, nieces, and nephews, has a threshold of 32,500 gerbils.
So inheriting your beloved aunt's cottage in the countryside might still leave you with a decent inheritance, even after the taxman takes his cut.
Exactly.
And for anyone else, more distant relatives, close friends, that sort of thing, they fall into Group C with a threshold of 16,250 mebies.
It's important to know where you stand.
Absolutely. But inheritance isn't just about what happens way down the line, is it? We need to talk about gifts, those generous gestures we might receive throughout our lives. How do those factor into all of this?
That's an excellent point, and you'd be surprised how many people overlook this. Gifts you receive during someone's lifetime, they count towards your overall inheritance tax threshold too.
So, that shiny new car a generous relative gifts you, that could potentially impact how much inheritance tax you end up paying further down the road.
Precisely. It all adds up. But there are ways to be strategic about it.
Now, those are the magic words I like to hear. Tell me more.
There's a handy provision called the small gift exemption. It lets you receive up to 3,000 euros per year from any person completely tax-free. And here's the kicker.
It doesn't affect your overall inheritance tax threshold.
Not a bit. It's a fantastic tool for those who want to be savvy with their finances.
That's a game changer. It might not seem like much year on year, but over time, it could make a significant difference.
Precisely. It's all about thinking long-term.
And that's what we're all about, right? Planning ahead and making informed decisions. But we've only just scratched the surface of this intricate world of Irish inheritance tax.
There are more layers to uncover.
Stay with us as we dig deeper into those all-important exemptions, reliefs, and other strategies that could save you a pretty penny in the long run. All right, back for more.
We're digging deeper into those tax-saving strategies you mentioned. Those exemptions and reliefs, they sound almost too good to be true.
Well, like anything related to taxes, there are always a few catches. But let's start with a big one, the dwelling house exemption. Music to many ears, especially here in Ireland. So, inheriting the family home, that could actually be completely tax-free.
Under the right circumstances, absolutely. The key is you need to have lived in that property as your main residence for at least 3 years before inheriting it.
So that holiday cottage you only visit a couple times a year, that wouldn't quite cut it?
Afraid not. And there's another condition. You can't own any other residential property at the time you inherit.
So if you've already got a flat in Dublin, inheriting the family estate might not be as simple as it seems.
Exactly. There are always those intricacies. And there's one more crucial detail. After inheriting the property, you're required to live there for at least 6 years.
So no inheriting and flipping for a quick profit. It seems like they really want to keep those family homes within the family. But what about those inheriting something other than a house, say a family business?
That's where business relief comes in. This one's particularly relevant for those inheriting a business or certain business assets.
Sounds promising. Tell me more about this relief. What kind of tax breaks are we talking?
We're talking a significant reduction, a whopping 90% off the taxable value of the inherited business.
90%. Now that's what I call a relief. But I'm guessing there are specific criteria to meet.
You bet. For starters, the business needs to be actively trading. We're not talking about passive investment companies or a simple portfolio of stocks.
So, real operational businesses bringing in the big bucks. What else do potential inheritors need to know?
They'd need to keep hold of that business for at least 6 years after inheriting it. No selling up for a quick windfall.
So, inheriting the family pub, but then deciding to sell up and chase your dream of opening a bakery, not going to fly with the revenue commissioners.
Not a chance. They want to see commitment. And speaking of Ireland and its heritage, there's a specific provision for those inheriting farms. Agricultural relief.
I was just getting to that. Does it follow a similar structure to the business relief?
Similar, yes. You're looking at that same impressive 90% reduction in the taxable value and the same 6-year ownership requirement. However, there's an extra layer, the 80% test.
An extra layer. Now I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
To qualify for agricultural relief, 80% of your total assets after you inherit the farm have to be agricultural.
Ah, so you can't be inheriting a farm on one hand and a tech startup on the other and still reap all the benefits.
Exactly. It's all about maintaining that balance.
This is all incredibly helpful. It really highlights the importance of thinking ahead, of planning. And speaking of planning, earlier we touched on those proactive strategies like the small gift exemption. Are there other ways individuals can get ahead of the game, so to speak?
Absolutely. And one tool that often comes into play is the establishment of a trust.
Trusts. Now, those always sound a bit like something out of a lawyer's playbook, a bit complex for the average person.
They can seem daunting, I'll admit. But trusts can be incredibly powerful when it comes to managing assets and potentially lessening those tax burdens.
So, in the context of inheritance planning, how would a trust actually work?
Let's say you have a family with young children. They decide to set up a trust and put assets intended for their children's future into that trust. This can offer several benefits.
Okay, I'm listening. What sort of benefits are we talking about?
Well, for starters, it provides a level of protection for those assets. It's like a safety net, shielding them from potential creditors or any future liabilities those children might encounter.
That makes sense, especially considering life can be unpredictable. But what about the tax implications?
From a tax perspective, trusts offer flexibility. Depending on how the trust is structured, it might be possible to reduce the overall tax burden on the assets held within it.
So trusts, asset protection, and potential tax optimization. Sounds like a win-win. Anything else in our inheritance toolkit?
Now, this one might surprise you, but life insurance, often seen as a way to protect loved ones financially, can also play a role in offsetting those inheritance tax liabilities.
Life insurance for inheritance tax? That's a new one for me. How does that work?
There are specific types of life insurance policies, called Section 72 policies, which are specifically designed to address future inheritance tax obligations in a tax-efficient way.
Section 72 policies. Got it. It sounds quite sophisticated. What makes them so tax efficient?
Essentially, they allow you to earmark funds specifically for inheritance tax. And when structured correctly, the proceeds of these policies can be used to cover those liabilities.
So it's like prepaying your inheritance tax, ensuring your loved ones inherit what you intend without being hit with unexpected tax bills.
Precisely. It's particularly beneficial for those with larger estates or more complex inherited situations.
We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding those tax-free thresholds to exploring trusts and even life insurance. But with so much to consider, are there common mistakes people make along the way? Those pitfalls that can really trip people up?
Absolutely. Even with the best intentions, people often fall into common inheritance planning traps.
Back again. We're ready to hear about those inheritance planning pitfalls you mentioned. Those common traps even the most well-intentioned folks can fall into.
You know, one of the biggest and often most damaging mistakes is also the simplest: not talking to your family.
Ah, those conversations about inheritance, they can be a bit, well, delicate.
Exactly. And putting them off, thinking it's a bit morbid or worrying about conflict, it often leads to more problems later on. Confusion, resentment, even legal battles. It's much better to be open, honest, tackle it head on.
So those conversations, as uncomfortable as they might be, can save a lot of headaches down the line.
Absolutely. It's about managing expectations. Everyone knows where they stand, what your wishes are. No surprises when the time comes.
Transparency is key. Now, what about that set it and forget it approach? Write that will, tuck it away, job done, not quite right.
Not a chance. Life's constantly changing. Our finances change. Family dynamics change. Even the tax laws themselves change. A plan you made years ago, it might not hold water today.
Regular checkups are a must then. No letting those important documents gather dust.
Exactly. I always recommend reviewing your inheritance plan every few years. Or, even better, whenever a major life event happens. Marriage, divorce, a new addition to the family, a big shift in your assets, anything that might impact your legacy.
Like those essential software updates, but for your inheritance plan. And speaking of updates, these days, our digital lives are almost as valuable as our physical assets. Do those need a plan too?
You're spot on. It's often overlooked. We've got online bank accounts, social media, even those cryptocurrency wallets. It all needs to be factored in.
So those embarrassing photos from our younger days, they could end up as part of our legacy too. But it's not just about sentimental value, is it? There are practicalities too.
Absolutely. Imagine your loved ones losing access to crucial financial accounts or treasured memories just because they don't have the login details. Make it easy for them. Leave clear instructions, account details, passwords, all that good stuff.
It seems we've reached the end of our inheritance treasure map. We've uncovered hidden pathways, deciphered cryptic clues, and hopefully armed ourselves with some valuable knowledge. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up?
Don't wait. Be proactive. Have those conversations with your family, however tricky they might be. Get those wishes down in black and white. And most importantly, don't be afraid to seek professional advice. A solicitor who specializes in this area or a tax advisor can be worth their weight in gold.
Wise words. Remember, folks, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to securing your legacy. We hope this deep dive into the world of Irish inheritance and gift tax has given you the tools and the confidence to plan wisely so your assets end up exactly where you want them, exactly how you want. Until next time, happy planning. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We always appreciate your feedback. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic too.